Welcome to the Blessors of Israel Podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. I'm honored to be in studio today with Pastor Rich Jones. He's the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. Though, Pastor Rich, I have to admit, coming into studio on a day like today, June 13th, earlier this morning, Israel attacked Iran, a preemptive strike against their nuclear capabilities, we are told, against their ballistic capabilities, we are told. And we're learning more information as well with regards to Iran having a plan to even use their army, along with their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, to actually do a ground invasion against Israel as well. But primarily nuclear right now, preemptive. And ultimately, I'm learning the goal was to bring them back to the negotiating table legitimately, honestly, as much as you can trust Iran to do so, to talk about their nuclear program.
Well, because I think it does bring up the question, like, why now, right? Because we had been reading, we've been following carefully that there have been engagements, discussions with the U.S. in regards to trying to bring out some agreement, reaching something, agreement with Iran regarding their nuclear program. Now, it wasn't going anywhere, right? It wasn't successful. It was failing. But then what appears to have happened is that Israel, through their secret forces, Mossad, determined that something had changed, right?
Exactly right.
Some plan had been now brought to fruition whereby Iran was very, very close to achieving the degree of purification needed for atomic bombs, perhaps 9 or 10 of them.
And the components together. That's the other thing I'm hearing. They're actually the potential for even assembling something together now.
Right. My point, though, is that the intelligence was gathered to create the understanding that there was an imminent threat, and therefore, just like 1967, the idea was a preemptive strike. They were convinced that this was a true threat that they had to deal with now. And so we've seen kind of some interesting things leading up to this. For example, I remember that Zelensky in Ukraine was complaining that the United States had diverted, I think it was something like 30,000 missiles to Israel, and he was concerned about this. Now we see what transpired, and it appears as though this was known for days.
Yes, exactly. But I think it even goes, it's interesting, recent reports are showing that Netanyahu admitted he had made the decision to do this back in November of last year.
Yeah.
And they had actually set a timeline for the end of April. Now, he didn't go into details as to why he pushed it back, but perhaps my sense is because the United States was engaged with Iran directly in regards to their nuclear talks. Let's let peace and diplomacy have room here to work. And then when it became clear, and even President Trump was making it clear, hey, we are warning them, we are trying to work with them, but we are at an impasse here. It is clear there are red lines. They wish to enrich uranium. You only need it at 3.7%. for energy uses, but what are they amped up to 60%, not too far from 90%, which is what they need for a nuclear weapon. So they were at an impasse, and Trump admits he gave them the green light, but he also said, we're not going to be involved with the actual offensive, but we will be there to support you defensively.
No, and honestly, I mean, we have been reporting for months now that we expected Israel to act, right?
The question was, would they do it by themselves or not? That was one of the questions, or would they do it without a green light from the United States?
Now we see.
Yep.
And it all came to last night's attack, which Israel is saying now is really the opening. And this is going to continue on for as long as necessary to make the impact. They are determined to make sure that Iran does not have that nuclear capability. And much of these facilities are buried deep in the mountains.
Natanz was taken out. Fort Al is under attack. I mean, they're doing the attack even as we are recording right now. But that is the one that is buried deep. And even there is a question of the bunker busters would be able to reach them.
Yeah.
Though you could obviously take out the access to it.
That's it.
And bury it to a degree, but for how long?
And interestingly, of course, now everybody expected Iran to respond, which they have done by sending hundreds and hundreds of missiles in response. And some are getting through, by the way.
Yeah.
The Iron Dome is not stopping all of them.
And some of our friends in Israel are communicating that with us. They've been in safe rooms, in bomb shelters, and some are getting through it. The last report, there has been one casualty, one death. Others have been minor injuries, a couple in critical condition. Some buildings have been struck.
Right.
So, but they're going after the civilian population. This is what makes it really interesting, is that that Israel was going after the scientists and the generals. That's a whole nother story in terms of how they studied the generals to make sure they were in one meeting room, and then they wiped them all out with one strike.
Yeah.
But now Iran's response is to go after the civilian population. So now that may escalate it further, where Israel's saying, okay, you're going to do that to our civilian population. Now we're going to go after your other types of leaders, such as your political leaders as well. They haven't defined that yet, but that's kind of the implication there. Mm-hmm. So this is very interesting. And, we recently had Jonathan Hessen from TV7 News
in Israel.
And he was talking recently about escalation dominance. Mm-hmm. And the idea here is that Israel strikes, but then based on the response of Iran, they will either throttle it down or dominate more. So if Iran comes back with a hard response, then Israel's going to beat them down even harder. Mm-hmm. And the whole goal is to bring them to that place where they will now concede and give up their nuclear program. Let's begin to negotiate.
Right.
Honestly, as much as you can trust the Iranians to do so, at least the current regime.
Right.
And I think it's important to make a distinction there, because Netanyahu says the people of Iran, this is not against you, it's against the regime that's been oppressing you.
Exactly.
And here's your opportunity to be liberated.
Exactly. And that has been a theme that we've seen quite a bit of time. But now what we're seeing is, and we've seen this before, where Israel takes out their defenses. They are defenseless, Iran is. They can do what they want with impunity. Israel can.
Yeah, it started last year, October in 2024.
Exactly.
Where you took out I think it was the Russian-built foresights defenses, the S-300s, I think they are.
All taken out.
And whatever was left over was taken out last night.
So my point being is that whereas Israel has the Iron Dome, and now the new laser, I forgot the name of that, the laser.
The Iron Beam.
The Iron Beam technology, no doubt, is being deployed. Although
and then the U.S. THAAD is also being used as well.
And interestingly, Jordan, these missiles have to fly over Jordan.
Yes, they do.
An Arab nation is shooting them down also. So the Arab nations are actually kind of coming to the support of Israel. They don't want Iran to have nuclear capability either, right? Saudi Arabia doesn't. Jordan doesn't. The Arab nations, because Iran is not Arab, right? These are not their brothers.
Very good point you make there. They're Persian. They're not Arab.
Exactly. And there's animosity and there's division between them. Now, has Iran influenced the Arab aspects? Yes, they have. Hamas, which is Palestinian Arab, have been controlled and funded by Iran. Hezbollah, Arab.
By the way, interesting about Hezbollah, they came out with a statement saying, we support Iran, but we're not going to engage with Israel. Is that a message?
That's a message.
In terms of how beaten down they are to realize we can't engage if we still want to exist.
And so when you think about what Israel has done, right, since October 7th, is that they have taken out Hamas, they have taken out Hezbollah, they have greatly reduced the Houthis, and now they're going for the head of the snake.
That's right.
And so, and they are supported, right? The nations of the world are saying, right, Iran cannot have nuclear
some of them
weapons.
are. He is getting support. Israel's getting support from Germany, from the UK, from France. So they understand that right for self-defense, even if it means a preemptive strike. They see that. But obviously, Russia's coming out, and they kind of Putin gave a threat of sorts to Netanyahu today. China's not happy. And remember, Iran just purchased 800 ballistic missiles from China.
Right.
They're on their way.
But remember, though, they don't want instability, right?
They don't want instability, but they don't like the fact that their ally, BRICS member, is now under attack. And there's a threat of a regime change.
And that's right. And they have no defenses to speak of at all. But nevertheless, Iran is an unpredictable ally, unstable in every way. If they had nuclear weapons, they would use them without a question. There's no deterrence.
Well, and this is one of the things I brought up with Jonathan when we had the podcast, is what would happen if Iran acquired a nuclear weapon? And he said it would change the landscape.
That's right.
Across not only the Middle East, but Europe, South Korea, other countries that don't would want one. Even Germany has been talking about wanting to get a nuclear weapon. I think some of that also falls back on the fact that, Trump has made it clear that he wants the NATO nations to carry their fair share. And so when they feel like Trump is pulling back the United States, well, now we need to defend ourselves. So Germany's talking about a nuclear weapon. Japan has brought this up, obviously because of the threat from China. You see a destabilizer that happens the moment this takes place. Saudi Arabia. My point. Exactly. Even Pakistan, get this. Pakistan has an arrangement with Saudi Arabia that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Pakistan will help share with them the nuclear capabilities.
Exactly. So it's an unstable factor. Like, Iran cannot have nuclear capability, right? And I think even China and Russia understand this, because the last thing they want is a nuclear war.
Sure.
This is disaster for the world. And what Israel has done has essentially what no one else wants to do but must do. And Israel has shown the will to do what needs to be done.
It's interesting that in America, though, there are those who are saying, even from the conservative side of things, well, this is Israel's battle. It really doesn't impact us. But we need to remember the rhetoric, and it's actually not even a slogan or rhetoric. It's their mission statement. Iran's mission statement is to do what? It's death not only to Israel,
the West,
but death to America.
Yeah, that's right.
And Israel is the little or small Satan, but America is the great Satan.
Right.
So on the one hand, yes, it's Israel's battle, but on the other hand, we need to realize Iran's not going to stop with Israel.
That's right.
They never intended to do so.
And of course, if Iran did use a nuclear weapon, and let's just say destroyed Israel, which we do not believe would happen. Biblically, it does not happen.
Exactly right.
Nevertheless, if that was even attempted, the United States clearly would step in and intervene. But the problem is, you now are risking World War III, right? And that's why the United States does not want to directly engage with this battle, because that only invites other players into the battle also.
I agree.
Right? So therefore, they are very wisely saying, Israel, you take it, you do it, and they have the capability to do it. I mean, Iran is essentially defenseless.
Exactly.
Right. And meanwhile, Israel is shooting down, 99% of the missiles and drones coming this way. And interestingly, they have such capability, and you were reading this in the news as I was, that Mossad, which is the Israeli special or secret forces calling our own CIA, has set up facilities inside of Iran.
They had been planning this for quite a while.
Yeah.
So when Iran wanted to utilize their ballistic missiles and drones, they would be shot down on site.
From within.
Right next door.
And Mossad set up facilities inside of Iran. That's amazing, right? Now,
what they can do is truly impressive.
Absolutely. Because you remember, I don't know when it was, 2 or 3 years ago, when Netanyahu came to the UN and brought receipts. Like, Mossad, we have the receipts. We can show you what they are doing in defiance of all of these negotiated deterrence factors. No, they are, in fact, building a nuclear weapon. Here are the receipts.
Yep.
And so we know that when Israel says, look, we have the intelligence to understand something is imminent, something is happening that is very dangerous, we have to act now.
But it's also interesting, it's not just what Israel said. The IAEA came out
recently,
and they sanctioned.
Right.
20 years, no sanctions. now they sanctioned this, I think it was earlier this week.
Right.
They leveled a sanction against Iran because they're not being forthcoming in regards to their nuclear program.
That's right.
So it's not just Israel saying this for the sake of, getting the green light from the United States. No, there are independent sources that are saying the same thing.
Exactly. And I read one, or I heard one news piece where the anchor was saying, why now? Why not Monday? To my answer would be, why Monday? Why not now? If they have intelligence
Exactly
that there's a threat that's imminent, why wait? When, in fact, the sooner that you act, the better, because you must catch them unaware or off guard.
Exactly right. And that's what, by the way, other news sources are showing. And it comes out that the United States and Israel were working together on this. Because I remember talking with you, it seems like there's this disconnect between Israel and the United States. It appears that was staged.
Yeah. Right.
It was staged to lull Iran into thinking, okay, we can play this now.
Yeah.
Much like a child of divorced parents. Okay, I'm going to play both sides here to get what I want. But ultimately what I want to do is I want to delay so that I get what I want, which is a nuclear weapon.
Exactly.
And so they're playing both sides, lull them into complacency, misdirection play. Netanyahu, his son's getting married. Okay, well, he's not going to do something on the wedding day or right around the wedding. All these things are taking place, total diversion, and then Israel strikes.
And of course, meanwhile, the United States has been saying to Iran, right, we are trying to negotiate something, right? We are working on a peaceful solution and pressuring them to come to the table and to find a peaceful solution. And then it was well known, I think, that they're just delaying and playing a game. And finally, the United States says, we're done.
Yep.
And then Israel got wind of the information that now they're just buying time because they have a plan. And Israel discovered that plan and decided to attack before they could implement what they intended to do.
And they got the green light to do so from President Trump.
Right.
And then President Trump has basically said now, this could be the way to get Iran truly to the negotiating table.
Yes.
To, dismantle their enrichment program, much like Libya, so that way the Middle East is safe from the threat of Iran utilizing a nuclear weapon.
As long as Russia stays out of it, as long as other nations stay out of it, and that it's only between Israel and Iran. If it's limited just to that, then I think that's exactly right. It will pressure Iran back to the table, and as you made the point, as much as they can be trusted, to come up with some kind of negotiation.
This current regime.
Right.
Yeah. If that regime no longer exists, then maybe we get some other players. But even then, there is no guarantee.
No, that's right.
Here with Iran's lost their top tier of generals and scientists. But that doesn't mean the next group is going to be any different.
Yeah.
In fact, they may feel more pressure to take it up a step.
Right. But nevertheless, pressure is now going to come to bear because Iran has no defenses.
Well, and I think you got to look at what happened with Hezbollah. Isn't it interesting, their response?
Right.
They are clearly battle weary and fearful.
They're not engaging with this.
Not
right?
at all.
Exactly. And so again, Israel is going after the head of the snake.
And by the way, Hamas really isn't either.
Well,
they're basically saying, well, just because our dear brothers Iran, our partners Iran,
right.
they supported us here, the Palestinians in Gaza, so now this is why they're being attacked.
Well,
playing the victim card of all things.
Of course. And Hamas has nothing to attack with nowadays. I mean, they've really been decimated down to a fraction of what they once were. Same with Hezbollah. So now is the time. I think you see a strategy, right? We're going to take this, then we're going to take Hezbollah, then we're going to take out the Houthis, and then we're going to go after the head of the snake. And again, I believe it was driven by intelligence that something was imminent.
Also though the leadership, the fortitude of Netanyahu and the Knesset, the coalition, to now take that step. It's one thing to have the strategy. It's another thing to execute it. And to execute it as they have repeatedly with excellence.
But look at
what, it's without peer.
I agree. And they've got the will to do what needs to be done.
Well, they recognize the existential threat. If they don't, it's either us or them.
Exactly right. That's been the motive since the 1930s. If we don't defend, we will be destroyed. And so, again, the nations of the world, even Russia and China, I am convinced, don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They're not a dependable partner in any kind of sense, and they would use it, right? So them getting a nuclear weapon would destabilize the entire world. And so therefore, I am convinced that the nations will stay out of it. It'll be between Israel and Iran. Let Israel deal with it and pressure them back to the negotiating table, and then the United States could come in and settle and negotiate a deal.
So, as Christians, how should we stand with Israel at this time and pray for Israel? Because right now things are moving. I mean, rapidly.
Sure.
Things are changing, and when you're in war, there are unintended consequences as well. So, how should we be in prayer for Israel?
Well, number one, Scripture tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem,
yes,
and extended thereby the peace of Israel. So we need, and I know you pray, I know my wife and I pray, we regularly stand with Israel, we pray for them, and of course our prayers are intensifying, even as this conflict
Clearly
is intensifying. So we encourage our listeners, number one, pray for the peace and the protection and the safety of Israel, but pray also, number two, that it is not escalated beyond these two countries, right? It has to be settled between them. So let's pray that no other country takes an opportunity to jump in. I don't think they will, but we want to pray in this regard. Let's try to bring this down, although Israel is saying, no, we're not going to bring it down until we accomplish our goals.
We're going to escalate until they're willing to.
Right. But my point is, if it's just those two countries, then it's limited. Mm-hmm. That we have to pray in that way. Then we got to pray that there will be some kind of long-term negotiation, settled agreement that Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, because the world will be unstabilized if they get it. They will use it. That's our prayer.
They say they will, and they will.
They mean it.
And even now, more so.
Absolutely right. Now they say, now we're justified. Now you can see why we have to have it.
Exactly.
This is what the Iranian president is saying. See, we told you. Now we have to for sure.
And yet it's still good to know that God is on the throne.
Exactly.
None of this caught God off guard. He sees all, knows all. He's in our tomorrows. And he's the God who asks us to pray, to ask and to seek and to pray. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to pray for the peace of Israel in keeping with Psalm 122.
We're going to pray. We're going to watch.
Yes.
We're going to stay on the alert. And we are going to stand with Israel. Israel will be the focus of the unfolding of prophetic events in the latter days. We are seeing the nations of the world aligning.
Agreed.
Very much like what we see in the
Agreed.
Scriptures in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And we are seeing, therefore, an urgency to the matter today.
I couldn't agree more. Great, Mike. Well, it's been a blessing to have you join us today, and we want to encourage you to join us as we pray for Israel, but I want to also pray also for Israel's enemies. For all who don't know Jesus Christ, because really He is the only answer.
Yeah, we have to have revival.
Our soul is not transformed apart from faith in Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Lives are not transformed apart from faith in Jesus Christ. So we need to pray, because God doesn't delight in the death of the wicked.
That's right.
He wants all to come to saving faith in Jesus Christ. I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to check out our website at www.blessors.org. That's blessors with an ors.org. The reason why I want you to go to our website is there you'll learn about our vision and our mission as an organization, what we stand for, what God has called us to do and raised us up for such a time as this. Also like to encourage you to visit our newsroom. We want you to be well informed concerning Israel and the Middle East. So you'll see original articles with a biblical perspective involving prophecy as well. In addition, you'll see curated news concerning Israel and the Middle East from all these different sources, again, because we want you to know what is going on concerning Israel and how to stand and pray with them. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like this podcast and subscribe to this channel. You can follow us on Facebook, X, and Getter, and we appreciate your prayers and your financial partnership as we build this new and important ministry. Remember, those who bless Israel will truly be blessed. Shalom, shalom.